that you have so much control over preventing entirely preventable emergencies. Welcome to Tea Time. I'm so glad to see you this week. Let's have some tea together, spill all the tea on business. And this week, let's spill a really big cup of tea because I always like to say we need to prevent preventable emergencies. And I always do the air quotes because most emergencies, what we think are emergencies, are not actually emergencies. They feel like emergencies and they might have actually turned into an emergency, but they're not actually emergencies at their core. And I really want to dissect that with you this week. So, what's a real emergency? Let's start with that first. A real emergency, if you think about it in insurance terms, we all have insurance, whether it's car insurance or home insurance. But a real emergency, when you read that in insurance, are things like things that are not covered through acts of God. So things that are out of your control. Things that are out of your control are true, honest to God emergencies because you can't prepare for them. You frequently don't see them coming, and there might be a limited amount of what you can prevent or what you can even do about it in the end. It really means that you just kind of have to pick up the pieces and go from there. We can think about anything that happens in everyday life, like natural disasters, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. I happen to live in an earthquake zone. And while we have great science that can help us predict storms and even the rumblings of the tectonic plates in our planet, we can't always totally predict what is going to happen. And so sometimes just shit happens. And those are real emergencies. But in business, a lot of times, as a systems provider, I hear from a lot of people and they're like, oh my gosh, I just keep having all these emergencies. Or I need help right now. I'm having an emergency. And yes, in the moment, it has basically turned into an emergency. Something that should have been done 6 months ago suddenly now needs to be done. And it can definitely be an emergency in that moment. But at its core, it's something that was entirely preventable. And what I want to educate you on today is to make sure that you understand how much is in your control in your business, that you have so much control over preventing entirely preventable emergencies. What I want you to think about is that you, as the CEO, are always in the business of solving problems. I always tell my clients, we have our topics, we have our passions. I'm a nut for digital data management and working with business owners and helping them see bigger revenue growth and all kinds of exciting things. Like that really just gets me going every single day. It's my favorite thing. I'm so glad that this turned out to be my career. But the truth is that on a daily basis, I'm just solving problems. I am in the business of solving problems. And most of the problems I need to solve are preventable emergencies. So a lot of times when people come to me, they're like, Mary, I don't know what to do next. Like I feel like I have so many things that have to be done and they all have to be done right now. And there are so many schools of thought that help you work through this. People call them getting over speed bumps in your business or working through business bottlenecks. Whatever the term might be that you like using that has resonated with you from all the various teachers who are out there, I really want to encourage you to think about this in terms of, well, if I'm in the business of solving problems and I am in full 100% control of all the preventable emergencies that are in front of me, which of these preventable emergencies would be the worst one, would be the most catastrophic? And let's start with that one. You can think about it in terms of what would have the biggest impact. Like if you don't get your bookkeeping under control, you're going to have a real problem managing all the monies that are coming through into your business. It's going to make tax season especially difficult. And those might be things that you want to tackle and make sure that you take steps towards getting that resolved. maybe the preventable emergency that feels most in alignment to fix right now is something that could happen the soonest. Maybe it's not the biggest, most large magnitude problem, but maybe it's something where, if you don't start figuring out, say, your content calendar and how to manage all the data that you're producing as a result of making all this content, kind of like how I'm making these YouTube videos right now. How do I manage all those videos? Where do they go? What about all of the associated collateral, like the title cards and the trailer and all the things? What do I do with that? And it's becoming really messy, and it's preventing you from reaching more people. Maybe that's the preventable emergency that you solve today. So when it comes to our systems, a lot of times we will think that piece of technology broke on me, or that process didn't work for me, or, oh crap, I didn't bring in enough clients. And, it turns out that the preventable emergency was something in your workflows, and it made it really hard for somebody to say yes because there were so many hoops to jump through. And that would be a preventable emergency well worth solving sooner rather than later. So when you're thinking about your preventable emergencies, I want you to think about just giving yourself a little bit of space. I'm a really big fan of personal CEO retreat days. They can even just be like an hour or two if that's all you've got. A half day is better. A whole day would be even better. And if you can find yourself a weekend here and there, that's even better. But you're just going to take some of that time, and you're just going to give yourself a chance to purge. I happen to think a lot better when I'm looking at things that are like bigger. Like if I'm looking at super tiny handwriting, it actually makes it harder for me. I just think it might be the way my brain processes things. So if this helps you, feel free to steal this. I love going to, the office supply store and getting those big Post-it sheets, and I'll stick them up on the wall. I love me my Post-it notes. And so really big Post-it notes, hell yes. And I'll put them up, and I'll get really nice magic markers, and I'll just start dumping everything out of my brain, and I'll dump them out there, and I'll look at what are all the things I'm really worrying about right now. How big are these things? How realistic are these things? Sometimes we worry about things that aren't going to be preventable emergencies yet because the thing that turns it into emergency still hasn't happened. So here's a really great example of that. You are feeling like you need to find more clients, and your content calendar is just a mess, and you're so confused, and making a posting schedule just feels really overwhelming, and you feel like you keep missing the ball every week. You never post anything. You never send a newsletter. And what turns out, though, is that you actually just need to have conversations with people because you still need to offer your pilot program. That is a much bigger problem, and actually the preventable emergency problem that needs to happen, needs to be solved for now rather than the other one. The other one would be good to solve for too, if you can find some bandwidth for it. But in the meantime, we need to get paid. So a lot of times the things that we're solving for have a lot to do with how do I increase my cash flow? How do I make more money? So when you're doing that big brain dump, that big heart dump onto your big sheets of paper, and you're thinking, what is making me feel really nervous right now in this particular season? Maybe the season is the day or the week or the month or the quarter, whatever the season means to you in this moment. Think about how many of these things at their root have to do with money, and don't avoid the money topics. Give yourself a chance to really think through that, because a lot of times the things we consider emergencies all have to do with money. And remember that money is energy. So usually it's a feeling of I'm not going to have enough, or I'm spending it too quickly, or I'm giving away too much and I'm not getting enough back in return. So really take a look at that relationship to that energy source, and I bet that you'll find you end up with a slightly easier season when it comes to emergencies, and it will start to reduce your stress level and take a load off your shoulders, and it will actually enable you to start working on bigger, more tactical problems that will help you grow and reach more people and start bringing in more of that cash flow. So remember, you are in 100% control of most of the things that you're worried about, and this is a great way to get yourself centered and grounded into that space. So have fun with your preventable emergencies. Remember that you are in the business of solving problems this week, and I will see you back here next week.